about the operators, because these are different from the math operators. So previously we saw the multiplication is an asterisk, division is this backslash, addition is a plus sign, subtraction is a dash, exponents is a this, I'm not sure how this is called, but it's this when you press shift 6. And then you got parentheses to show groupings, right? You can have different operations and group some operations within parentheses. Now, for logic operators, you need to do a comparisons, right? When you're talking about logic, you got to check a condition. You check, if that cell contains a number that's greater than 100, you want it to do something, something. If it's greater than 200, you want it to do something else. If it's greater than 1,000, then you want it to do something else. So if you think about it, you're always comparing something. And in order to compare something, you need a logical operator, which is equal. You say this is equal to this, or this is equal to that. That's the operator of equal, and it's it's used by the equal sign. It's defined by the equal sign. Not equal, you gotta use two characters. So it's this is less than and greater than. When you combine those two in a equation, then you got a not equal to. And we're gonna see some examples, don't worry about it. The greater than is basically this symbol. You say, yeah, if you got something on the left, this is greater than what is on the right. When you want to say greater than or equal to, then you got to use two characters. In one, it's going to be the greater symbol, and then the equal followed by the equal sign. Similarly, you got the less than, which is the less than symbol, and then in case you want to include some number, you say less than or equal to, you got to use two characters. Now, I added this in bold and very, very big, because when you're typing in a formula, a text, you always, always, always need to put it in double quotes. That's the way that you tell Excel, hey, I want you to compare against this text. Because otherwise, it's going to think you're talking about a name, like we did on name managers. So it's important that you want a specific text to be compared with, just type in those double quotes and it will understand it. Questions so far? All right. So let's start with our first logic function, the simple if condition. Right, so the if condition, let me just explain the syntax first. So the if, it starts with a if, you open parentheses, and the if condition it will expect three different parameters. One is the logical condition, the logical test. Here's where you say if this cell A1 is equal to Antonio, or cell A1 is greater than 100. Cell A1 is less than or equal to 200. That's where you put that parenthesis. So when you think about the logical test, you always, always, always are gonna need a logical operator, because you need to specify that condition. So the first thing in an if is this logical test, which is an evaluation of something, and always, always, always needs a logical operator in it. And basically two values, right? You gotta say this equals to this, or this is greater than this. So you got two values and an operator in the middle. Then this operator, this logical test will result in two things, in one of two things. Or is it true or is it false? That's really logic. Actually, when we think about logic, everything is either true or false. That's called Boolean operations. So whenever you think about logic, it's always true or false. And then if something is true here, you gotta put in that formula what happens if that, your logical test is true, and then what happens if your logical test is false. Okay, and basically all of them are, well, 2 of them are required. The false is optional. If you don't put anything on false, it will just leave it blank. All right, so let's look at some examples here within this same
Would it give
PowerPoint.
you, sorry, Antonio, would it
No,
give
go
you
ahead.
an error if you don't, if you don't have the false part, or?
No, it will just, return blank, or it
Okay,
will automatically default it to false. I can give you,
okay,
once we go to example, we can actually test that
okay,
out.
perfect. Thank you.
Good question. All right, so this is our data as an example. And let's say we want to evaluate, right? Is A2 less than 3? A2 is 1. If A2 is equal to 3, will this test result in true or false? But we want to think about it is, okay, is
False.
A2 exactly? Well, no, actually it's true, because it's
Oh,
1
more.
here.
Yeah,
If we
sorry.
replace, yeah, no worries.
I need
Replace
my
1.
third cup of coffee already.
So we got, for example, A2, we can replace this with 1. Is 1 less than 3? That will be true, which means that the result will be this. Oh, note something. This is A2. Let me just put it back. I added this text, but remember that I put it within double quotes. Because if I don't do that, it will return an error, because I probably don't have a name in my name manager called less than 3. So it needs to have this double quotes in order to understand, oh, you want me to return a text that says less than 3. That's really what it's doing. Similar, with this text here, I'm telling Excel, hey, if in case it was greater, then put greater or equal to 3. Okay, second example, A3. A3 is 4. Is 4 less than 3? That's false. And because it's false, instead of displaying this, it's actually returning this, my false statement, right? If I look at my syntaxes, it's versus the logical test, then the value of true, and then the value of false. In my case, this was false, so it went to greater or equal to 3. Okay, here's an example with the not equal to. So, okay, so I got A4 not equal to A5. A4 is 7, A5 is 8, not equal. So 7 is not equal to 8. That's true. And because of that, it will return this parameter, not equal. Okay, let's see. All right, so this is a bit more complicated, and we're gonna do some examples of this. But in something, you think about it, a simple if will only allow you to do a comparison of one condition. Let's say you want to categorize things in 3 buckets. Then you might need 2 different ifs. And that's called a nested if. So you can do an if, let's say my first condition, if A1 equals 2, I wanted to do this. Sorry. If A1 was equal to 2, I wanted to return this. But if not, I wanted to do another analysis. So all this, if you think about it, if you look at it, it's actually in the false parameter of my first if. So as you can see, we can create very, very complex formulas by continuously adding if into a false statement, or you can actually do those on the ifs, on the true statement as well. It all depends on, how you start writing your formula. But, don't worry about this. We're going to go into an example and we can clarify all those in there. Any questions before we jump into the example? Okay. Right, so let's open this number 3 file. It'll be the logic formulas. And guys, this topic is a bit confusing. When we, logic formulas are confusing until we actually master it. So feel free to jump in, ask any question. My goal here is, that you fully understand all these concepts. All right. So, so when we open this file, this is what we got. Let me see for a second. Okay, yeah. We go to the logical functions tab. We're gonna have here some data. Now, what we have here is what, our first example, column L. Basically, what we're asking here, I want an if condition to classify yes or no if the region is central. So as you can see from my data, I got a region column, column B. So I wanted to display in this column a yes if it's central, a no if it's something else. So how we do that? Let me just zoom in. Just to make it easier, let me just hide all these columns so we can focus on the ones we need. All right, so we got region here. We got our column here. We want to add it. Now, in each one of them, I added an example of what the formula should look like. But let's do it, as part of the example here. Let me just make it bigger so you guys can see it better. And I'm going to start typing. All right, so we wanted to use a if condition. I click, first I got to start with my equal sign. Then I would just add my if and open parentheses. Remember that when working with formulas, Excel automatically suggests what's the next value and the syntax of the formula you're writing. That way you can just, go ahead and understand exactly what Excel is expecting for you. All right, so we need our logical test. How should that logical test be written? So we need our region, which is column B, and we're on row 10, so we select B10. So we're gonna say, okay, if this B10 is equal, this is our logical operator, that equal sign, and then it's equal to central. Oh, but what I did wrong, I forgot to add my double quotes.
Right. Yeah.
Because we wanted to compare against a text that is written in this way. Now, this is case sensitive. If I type it in with the lower C, probably will not detect it unless they correct it on Excel. Because I'm telling it to be exactly the same. That's the equal sign. To be central with capital C. Okay, so this is my condition. I'm done with my condition. I wanted, just to check that out. I'm gonna type a comma, and then I'm gonna type in, what happens if my value is true. So I want, if the region is central, I want to type in yes. And remember to put the double quotes on start and the finish. Right, so this is my true statement. And now it's missing my, I want to type in no if it's a false. Right, so I added my no with my double quotes as well. Now I'm ready to type in my parentheses. And when I click enter, I gotta know, because this is and not central. Now, is it my formula working? Let's look at it. Sorry, I did that too fast, but you can go to this bottom right corner of the cell, and you see that the cursor changes to black, with a cross with blacks. Now you can just double click it in case there are, data next to it, to what you're looking for, and it will actually go all the way down. And let's see what happened. So this is east, return no. This is south, you return no. This is central, you return yes. Central, yes. West, no. South, no. Central, yes. So it seems that it's actually working correctly. You can also double check by, filtering yes. Make sure everything is just central here. And when you click no, you just want to make sure you don't have any centrals here. And that way you just validated your formula is working correctly. Any questions? Okay. Well, I guess that was easy. So now let's do one with some numbers. Let's just select here, click on hide. And the formula I want to do here is where my total is greater than or equal to 500. So if it's greater than or equal to 500, I want it to display high. If it's less than that, I want it to display low. So let's do that. In my case, I'm just going to hide this so that it's easier for me to present to you guys. And I'm going to use my total, column G. So I go here and say, okay, want to type in equal if my total is greater than or equal to 500. Now, since this is a numerical value, you don't need the double quotes. You want it to actually compare against the number. Then what happens if true? So if it's true, I want it to type in high in double quotes. If it's low, I want to type in low in double quotes. And I am ready to close parentheses. When I click enter, I got my highs and lows, and I can just expand this formula down. As you can see, it did some classification for me. When I click high, all the ones here should be greater than or equal to 500. I can double check that here. And you can also double check it just by going to the formula, for example. And you just type in 499. It reclassifies it to low. If I type in 499, sorry, .99, still not 500, still low. Once it reaches out to 500, it's a high. And that way you can have, predefined analysis. What I recommend is if you're doing analysis over and over all the time, just make Excel work for you. Have these formulas created in, in another column, and just focus on next month or whenever you need to update your data. Just have a template where you just copy and paste information, and then all the formulas automatically will calculate for you whenever you copy and paste data. That way, every month you don't need to recreate the whole formula over and over again. Any questions with logical numerical comparisons? Okay. Right, so moving to my ands. Now, in order to do logical analysis and comparisons, in some cases, I need to do different comparisons of multiple conditions. Let's say I want the formula to return yes if it's based on two conditions, maybe three, maybe 255 conditions. In those cases, you're gonna need an AND formula to do so. And another formula is basically a formula where you add a bunch of different logical tests, and it will only return true if all of the logical tests are true. If one of them is false, the whole formula returns false. So basically the logic behind it is that, first condition needs to be true, second needs to be true, third needs to be true in order to return true. And it can allow up to 255 conditions. All right. Let's do a quick analysis. Okay, in this example, this is my spreadsheet, and this is my formula. Here, I say, okay, A2 is equal to 1, and this is an AND. A2 is equal 1, B2 is equal 1, and C2 is equal 1. Okay, so A1 is 1, B2 is 1, C2 is 1. So this will return, all the conditions return true, and because of that, this return true. Next example, A3 is equal 4, that's true. B3 is equal 4, that's also true. Then C3 is equal 4. This is false. Because of this one is false, the whole formula returns false. Also, within these logical operations, you can add comparisons with or mathematical operations as well. So let's say A3, which is 4, equals A2 plus 3. This is A2, which is 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 equal 4, that's true. A4 equals A2 plus 3. A4 is 7. A2 is 1 plus 3 is 4. So 7 is equal to 4. That's false. Because of this, all this is false. Another example here with not equals. A3 is not equal to 1. This is 4 is not equal to 1. That's true. B3 is not equal to 1, which is 4 not equal to 1. That's true. Now C3 is equal to 3. Yes, that's true. So all of them are true, and because of that, the end result is true. Any questions?
Okay, what will you actually use this formula for? I mean,
For a lot of things, and we're going to do an example just right now. So you need that formula, that logic, in order to be able to compare multiple or more, or build more complex analysis for you. Because if you a if will only evaluate one formula, one logical test. Let's say your analysis, your equation, whatever you're trying to get to, depends on more than one comparison. Then you need to aid that if formula with ands, because otherwise you will not be able to do the comparison you need to. So for example, I want to check, I want to see and return true whenever the region is west and the total is greater than or equal to 300. Okay. So I need to do these two comparisons. And this will be an example, right? I don't, for any given reason, I don't care when we got a region that's not west, or that, even though being west, I don't care when the total value is less than 300. Because I'm focused right now on looking at the region equal west with values of 300 plus. Maybe, for some reason, it is okay to have values less than 300, but whenever it's over 300, that may be a flag that maybe somebody's just spending more dollars than what they should be spending, maybe on trips or something like that. All right, so in terms of the example, what we need to evaluate is both the region and the total. Okay. So in order to do so, we need to start a equal sign, start with an equal sign, then add a and, open parentheses. As you can see here, it's asking me for what's my logical operator. Sorry, what's my logical test? So my logical test will be first that the region is west. So I select here B11. Actually, give me a second because I got my data filtered. Let me start on B10. Sorry, N10. Now equals and open parentheses, region is equal west. And we type it in with double quotes. For my second condition, I gotta separate those by comma. As you can see, once I type a comma, it put in bolds here that is expecting the logical test number 2. And whenever you see on this, the syntax that a parameter is in brackets, that means that Excel is telling you that it is optional. So in this case, my formula N can work fine with just one evaluation. All the rest are just optional. But in my case, since I want to evaluate 2 conditions, I need 2 parameters, 2 logical tests. So I already got covered the region equal west. Now I got to do the total greater than or equal to 300. So I can go to total, which is G10, and I type in greater than or equal. I got, both of my operators, 300. And I close parentheses. When I click enter, that returns false. When I double click, I got my evaluation. And let's see if I got some truths. And maybe those are the ones that are red flags for me that I gotta take care. Now, let's check what it's doing. Yeah, go ahead. There was any questions?
Yeah. So we are getting the return as false or true. Can we add, let's say, a text for it to say, let's say, yes, or let's say some other word in a different situation?
Yeah, you're already going ahead of me. That
Oh,
will be
sorry.
the next. No, it's fine. It's fine. That's good. That will be actually yeah, this is a great question to clarify this. That's the difference between a and an if. A and just returns true or false. And in
Okay.
reality, what this is just helping you is minimize the complexity in an if condition, or
Mm-hmm.
just aiding that if. You're gonna need an if to be able to manipulate the output.
Okay. All right.
And
Thank you.
we're gonna do the example just right now. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's a great question because ands just return true or false. And
Okay,
because it
there's
returns true or false, you can replace the logical test of an if with that big and.
okay.
Okay, so let's see what that and is doing. If we go to evaluate formulas on the formula menu, you go to evaluate formula. Let's go step by step and see what's going on. Right, when I go here, I want to make sure that my and is working correctly. So I do evaluate. I do B10 east is equal west. That's a false. That immediately will make my and be a false. So it's false, but in terms of Excel, it needs to evaluate the whole thing to basically end up with a false. Now G10 greater than or equal to 300, 189. So this is going to return false as well, and 2 falses in an and that returns false. Now let's see. I got this true. I want to evaluate this true. Let's do the evaluate formula. Okay, B45. Is this west? Okay, west equal west. That's true. And then G45, let's see what value it has. 825 is greater than or equal to 300. True. And true is true. Any question before we jump into the if? Okay. So to answer Brunilda's question, in order for us to manipulate or change the output of a true or a false, we will need an if condition to do so. If you're starting, when I actually started with logical test, instead of putting my whole logical test into one big formula, sometimes I would just divide it into different columns. That way, as I was learning, it would just make my analysis or my experience a lot better when understanding and making sure that I'm doing the right calculation. Because if you start putting a big, huge formula and you still, are kind of learning, you might run into trouble where you forgot a parenthesis. And then the problem with Excel is that it will not let you get out of the cell with an error. So you will need to delete the whole formula and figure it out again and start over. So my recommendation, there's nothing bad with having additional columns in your Excel. Yeah, it may increase the size of your file, but at least it's going to help you out, make sure you're calculating the right thing. So you can use this formula with a combination of ands in two different ways. Since I already have my and created here, that's evaluating west, region west, and total value greater than 300, I can just reference this formula in my if logical test parameter. And in this case, for example, I want to say, okay, if this column is true, then return me yes. If this column is false, then return me no. Or you can just change the text if you like. So okay, how do I do this? I start with my equal sign. I do an if, open parenthesis. Now it's asking me for my logical test. My logical test, I already have it created right here, so I don't need to write it again. You just click here. And this is already checking west and 300. So in this case, a comma. Because my condition, actually, I was wrong before because earlier I said that you will always need a logical operator into this logical test. That's not true in this case because we are referencing a cell that already did this. But as you think about it, right? This already has the logical operator in it. So somehow, if you're doing a logical test, at least at some point there should be a comparison of two different values, at least. Okay, so going back to my if this cell is true, then I put a comma. I want to type in yes. But if N10 is false, I want it to return no. And I can close parentheses. I click enter, and it's no. You can see whenever it's true, it says yes. Let's say instead of yes and no, maybe I just wanted to say flag because this is, a problem. Whoa. And maybe instead of no, say this one is okay. So you can basically, with an if, you can just assign any kind of different text you want it to be, depending on what the analysis you're doing is. Any questions up to this point? Okay. So, well, once you become more experts with all these formulas, right, you can just build everything in just one column instead of having multiple columns for it. How you do that? In this case, we're just going to do the same thing we did in two different columns, but we're going to do it in one. And we're going to do the evaluation of the if and the ands to check west and 300, and then return maybe yes or no or flag and okay within just one formula. So how we do that? We're going to start with an equal sign. We're going to do an if. We open parentheses. My recommendation will always be that whenever you open a parenthesis, just close it right there and then go inside of it. Why? Because if you don't close a parenthesis correctly, then you're going to have a lot of time, trying to find where you have your missing parentheses. If you start typing your formula and always, whenever you open a parenthesis, you close it out, you're not going to have that problem. So I strongly recommend you to do it this way. All right. So what it's expecting, and to make it simpler for you, you can type in some spaces in there. It won't affect the formula at all, right? Okay. So what is expecting my formula right now? So it's expecting my logical test. Now my logical test needs to evaluate two conditions: region west, total greater or equal to 300. So what I'm needed right now, my logical test will be the combination of an and with those two conditions in it. Because if I don't put an and in there, I'm only going to be able to check one condition, either region equal west or the total value greater than 300, but I cannot check both. So that's why I'm going to need a and. And again, I open parenthesis and I close it again. Now I have this and is going to become my whole logical test of my if, right? You can see I selected and this is my logical test. Now I'm going to go inside of the and see how my suggestion changes. So you can see now my suggestion is based on an and because I'm inside of the and parenthesis, and it's expecting a logical test 1. My logical test 1 is going to be that my region, this cell B10, is going to be equal to west. So I already have my first logical test. I need my second one. So I'm going to type in a comma inside of my and type in the total is greater than or equal to 300. Now I got my two conditions ready inside of an and. So I'm good for that. Then I need to add what happens when that whole and formula returns true. So if it's true, I wanted to type it. Oh, I'm sorry. It was yes. I close quotes, then a comma, and what happens if it's false? I just type in no and close quotes again. Since I already added all the parentheses and close it out whenever I added one, I'm good to go. My formula is ready. So I can click enter, and this one return no. As you can see, I can just search, right, and say, okay, which ones are yeses? And I can say, okay, yeah, this is 825 on the west region. Probably we need to call Sorvino to see what happened. And this is yes when it's west, and this is a total 1,000. Probably we need to call Thompson to see what happened, because these are problematic or something. Or the other ones, if these are okay, we don't care about, even though they're west. They're not reaching that threshold of $300 that I set up. Okay. Any question up to this point? Are we good?
Yes.
Is it clear, or or is it confusing, or have you used it in the past?
I believe that the key here is to use the order of operation instead in the same way as the operation, a normal operation for the formulas.
Right, and it's a matter of what your conditions, what you're trying to get it from your analysis, right? If you have one simple condition, just use an if without an and or a or that we're just going to explain. But if in case you need more than one comparisons, you need a and condition. That's where it gets a little bit more complex. Right, so that covers the if with a combination of a and. Sorry, Ernesto, were you going to say something?
No, no, we're good.
Okay. All right, so that covers the if and ands. I'm going to hide this. Now we're going to explain what's a or. So a and, remember, ands will return true only and only if all the logical tests inside of it return true. Ors will return true if at least one is true. It's like whenever, let's say you're, I don't know, you will buy a car if it's red or black or yellow, for example. So if it's, somebody will offer you a car you like and it's either red or black or yellow, you will buy it. So you just have one car that's just one color. So let's say you got one that's yellow, then you're gonna buy it because it's yellow, or you're gonna buy it because it's black, or you're gonna buy it because it's red. It may not be the perfect example, but what I'm trying to get to is that from multiple choices, when one of those choices are met, then it's going to return true. If the or will return false only and only if all the logical tests inside of it are false. And that's basically the main difference between ands and ors. So in terms of the syntax, it's expecting up to 255 logical tests inside of it, and we'll perform that. Now here's a quick question, a quick example of how this or works. All right. So or A2 is equal 1. A2 equals 1, that's true. So just by having this true, you already know this will return true. In this case, all of them are true. B2 is equal 1, C2 is equal 1, all of them are true, so it's still going to return true. In this case, A3 equal 3. This is false, right? But then we need to evaluate all of them because at least if one returns true, then the whole thing is true. B3 is equal 3. That's false too. Now C3 is equal 3. That's true. So this returns true. So that's basically the difference between ands and ors. Whenever for an or, whenever something is true inside of it, then everything just becomes true. All right. So let's do an example. In this case, we're going to do an example with just an or, not a if yet. So with an or, it will always return either false or true. If we want to change the text, we will need a if condition to do so. Okay, so if we go here to west, we're going to evaluate region west or region central. We want it to return true when the region is either any of these two. So how do we do that? We go here, we type in equal, we say, okay, the region, actually, let me just unfilter because I have the data filtered down. Apologies. All right. I'm gonna start with my equal sign. Equal, my region, which is B10, sorry, I forgot the or. So you gotta open and open parenthesis and close parenthesis and go inside of it. If you like, you can just expand it to make it more easier to manage, to write in there. So we got the or created. Now it's expecting my first logical test, which is gonna be B10 equal west, comma, the region is central. So when I click enter, let's see what happens. Can you see the error that I had there? It's pointing me out that I had an error, and it's because I didn't include this double quote. So in case you see, it happens the same, just check your formula, make sure it's correctly written, and all the double quotes are there. So okay, so in this case, I should be good to go now. I will click enter, and this returns false. When I double click here, you got some truths and we got some false. So I'm gonna select the truths and see what happened. Okay, so this is central, this is okay. This is central, it's okay. This is west, it's okay. Central, central, west, as you can see, it only captured with true all the ones that were either central or west. It's actually, look at this, they actually corrected it. And even though you type it in with capital letter, it still recognizes it with, a lower case. So they made it non-case sensitive recently. Before you will get a false whenever this happened. Which is a good thing in case, you got some data that's reading in different caps, you probably can still capture within the same formula. All right, any questions with the ORs? Okay. Right, so moving next to the if with an or. In order to change the text, what we can do is just, type equal if. Since we already have this in this column, you can just select it. Then if it's true, we just type yes. If it's false, we type in no with double quotes and close parentheses. And we click enter. And our formula is already changing from true to yes and no's and false to no's. That's when you have, two columns to do the same thing in a combination, which is, it's nothing wrong. I actually suggested if you're starting, because once you start putting all these formulas into it, it may become messy. Okay. So I'm going to do the same here. Now, I want to, actually, this is an error. This should be an or. So in this case, I want to do something different. Let's go ahead and change this from west to central and greater than 300. So now in this case, I want to, within the same formula, I want to add an if, because I want to evaluate if the region is central or my total is greater than 300, then return yes. If not, if the condition is not met, then return no. Or actually, I may want to even make this a little bit more challenging. I may also want to evaluate just to make it different from the other examples. I will also want to evaluate if maybe my cost is less than or equal to $5. Right, and I will just put another or. Okay, so look at this example. I want to evaluate a formula where if the region is central, or if the cost is less than $5, or my total value is greater than 300. For that, I will need an if, and based on that, return yes if the condition is met, or no if it is not. So for that, I'm gonna need a if condition to manage what the return will be, a yes and no, and my ors to be able to evaluate my logical tests. So let's get started with this one. So I'm going to start with equal if open and close parentheses. Then inside of this, my first logical, it's expecting my logical test, but my logical test, since I got 3 different conditions, needs to be an or. I type in or and open and close parentheses. And I move inside of the or of the parentheses of the or. Now here's where I start putting my conditions. So my condition will be that region is central. So I can go to my V10 equals central, those double quotes, then I put a comma. My second logical test will be what? My cost is greater than or equal to $5. So now I gotta select my cost, which is this one. And I will say less than or equal to 5. Now I need to go to my third condition. I put a comma. As you can see, now it's flagging my third condition. I'm gonna say my total is greater than or equal to 300. Now I got my 3 conditions inside of an or, and that's what I needed. So now what I need to go is get outside of my or, and I'm going back. I got back to my if condition. If I type in a comma, now it's asking me, hey, what you want me to do if this is true? So if it's true, I want it to return yes. And we put those in double quotes. And if it's false, now I put a second comma. It's expecting my false statement. And now I just put with quotes, no, and close quotes. And basically this is the evaluation of, if my region is central, my cost is less than $5, or my total value is greater than 300. For any given reason, I'm just interested in those cases. And I click enter, and now I get my results. I expand this, and you can see this is yes. Why this is yes? Let's see. Is this central? No. Is my cost less than $5? Yes. So that will make this yes.